Hey there, welcome to episode 33 of the Cafe Genius Impresario's audio program. Today is Friday the 13th. The world is a chaotic place, but today we'll be speaking about our local economy here in Southern Nevada, Nevada in general. Today's episode is called Mind the Gap. I'm your host, Dan Hugo, as usual. Today's a solo episode. I will hopefully have guests on in the future to talk about this very topic. I think it's an important one. It's essentially one of the main reasons Cafe Genius took form, and it's basically the focus of our weekly episode so far, our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, and there's been a couple of interesting articles and a general direction that we'll kick off a discussion about now. So in the show notes, I have 3 links, at least 3 so far. If I add one, we'll see. There are 2 articles that have been published recently, one on the Nevada Independent. It's a website, thenevadaindependent.com, and it's concerning entrepreneurial efforts that are being driven by recent legislation, the AB 77 law, I guess, that's passed. The governor, Joe Lombardo, he promised during his campaign and since that Nevada would be a bastion for, that's my words, bastion for entrepreneurialism. So AB 77 is a step in that direction, allegedly, and does a few things, including shoring up support for existing Startup NV and a few other sources of funding, establishes an entrepreneurialism office of entrepreneurialism, something. It's in the article. So you look at it, it's the Office of Entrepreneurship. How can you get simpler than that? So AB 77 establishes the Office of Entrepreneurship and does some other things regarding access to resources, which will, let me glance at this article once more. And again, the link is in the show notes for this. The AB 77, according to the article, it's written by Doug Irwin at the EDON up in Washoe County. AB 77 designed to remove barriers and empower aspiring entrepreneurs. What about nascent? Giving increased access to resources and fostering a culture of entrepreneurship. That sounds familiar. AB 75 reduces the requirements for accredited investors, so you can probably move more towards community funding, angel NV perhaps. There'll be a lot of things ending with NV, incubate NV, accelerate NV, startup NV, angel NV, Silicon Valley NV, ENVY. So you'll hear that name a lot. Those are all affiliated. So we have a consolidation of gatekeepers, I guess, for various aspects of access to resources. And in general, could be money, but it could also be, for example, Incubate NVE offers online courses for starting a venture. And but yeah, these are all sort of central planning in effect. And we'll get to why that's a problem in a moment, but I just wanted to run through that. So yeah, AB 77, AB 75. AB 77 for the resources, S75 for requirements for accredited investors. And so those are interesting. They're not as wonderful as one might think because you cannot just pass a law. If you're a street vendor, you know that passing a law does not mean you are now able to magically do things, right? If you're not familiar, street vendors were made legal. That's what they thought. There was legislation passed that would make street vending easier at the state level. I think it was state or county, state. But the county health department had not actually implemented regulations that would be enforceable by code enforcement officers. So even though the legislation was passed, and it's outside the scope of this episode today, so I'm not going to dive into it too much, although as you may know, I'm a big fan of mobile vendors. I've had an owners association in 2 different places, Silicon Valley and here, and I've done an episode comparing the 2 aspects of the two, given that they were the same notion, different places, different cultures, entrepreneurial culture, in fact. So the bill was passed, or the law was passed, which again, I'll leave that to the listener, but the regulations from the health department and the county in general, because the strip, for example, is in the county clerk. And so street vendors were still being cited and removed, and worse, because code enforcement was going by rules that were still in effect because new regulation and was not keeping up with new legislation. So this can happen. So merely passing AB 77 does not magically create entrepreneurialism in Southern Nevada. So that's a gap that we'll get to. We'll summarize at the end with all the gaps. So, by the way, if you hear sort of a thumping noise, we can't all create our online content in the ideal conditions that we all hope we could. So that's a separate issue about our entrepreneurial ecosystem. It's not full of entrepreneurs. So AB 77 again will be the main thing: access to, or enabling more access to capital by reducing the requirements to be an accredited investor in an angel fund or similar. That's useful. There's a claim that there's a problem with access to capital here in Southern Nevada in particular. Yeah, that depends. As well, the Clark County Commissioners have accepted a plan to, proposal, I guess, to create an innovation district along the 215 between the Harry Reid Tech Park and the current Innovation Center, which is not really, I guess it's not really open so much from what I understand. So it's where Switch is. There used to be a co-work space there, Innovation, I-N-N-E-V, as in Nevada, Innovation Center. I'm not even sure if that's open anymore. I know pandemic times, they basically shut it down, and I don't know that it's actually back to normal operation. But either way, that's another endpoint that has been mentioned. It would go near UNLV. It would basically connect our education infrastructure as much as there is there. And then at the Tech Park, which is obviously affiliated directly with UNLV, Switch, to whatever extent that's interesting. I will say that Switch does host the Cherry Creek supercomputer that was gifted to UNLV by Intel Corporation. Happens to have happened while I was an Intel employee. So I was personally and directly aware, and not involved directly, but aware, sat in the meetings, etc. So yeah, interesting time. So Switch is still integral if there's going to be any computer technology, which, as we'll see, is the main thrust of this entrepreneurial effort in Southern Nevada. So, and then the other link I have in the, Amazon product interaction there. The other link I have in there is about it's actually on the EDON website. Speaking of that other article on the Nevada Independent website. The EDON website is hosting the final Empowering Entrepreneurship document for the Nevada Ecosystem Assessment and Plan. It was published in April of 2023. Author Mo Collins was actually a guest on for another audio episode here on the Impresarios podcast. So you can listen in on that. I'll leave that to you because you should be subscribed to this feed anyway. So it's earlier in the feed, back in April or May. I think it was April. We do shows weekly, so it's one of 3 or 4 different weeks, which I have not looked up because I don't want to dive into that too much. You can listen to that episode if you like, about 2 hours, I think. But so remembering the report is interesting. I don't know that people have actually read it. I did. Mo did. She called it a slog. Maybe. The part about Southern Nevada is interesting, not earth-shattering. I think if you are an entrepreneur in Southern Nevada, tech or not, and there's an ungainly focus on tech. I would like to see more focus on innovation and more focus on just general entrepreneurialism. Neither of those need to be tech. As I frequently say, you can be innovative when it comes to food or drink or art, visualizations, media creation. If you look at what's that thing? It's spherically shaped and it has a big display on it. Everybody's talking about it. You can be innovative not only with the tech of that spherical building, but the content that is displayed. In some sense, the content is video and audio that goes with it. But in another sense, you are taking advantage of this new way of making the presentation. So you can be innovative there. So innovation does not need to be tech. It certainly doesn't need to be a unicorn startup, which we'll get to also. The document does, though, spell out several strengths and weaknesses. We do actually have a culture of entrepreneurialism here. It's just not the one that they want. If you have ever been to a coffee shop or a restaurant or retail outlet or bar or bookstore, retail, you have already been probably in an entrepreneurial endeavor. We have a culture that enables that. We actually have a culture of mobile vending. You can be an entrepreneur on wheels. Certainly, there's been some attempts at entrepreneurial ride sharing. I honestly don't know if drivers in Nevada are considered independent contractors. I think so. But, that's you're able to drive for multiple vendors. You can deliver food. You can drive people to the airport, to the strip, etc. So, entrepreneurialism is not a new thing here. Certainly. So, obviously, if they do want to switch, and this is a drive for economic diversity, it's something that's been talked about for years, but the pandemic times made it clear that we must not depend on visitors and tourism all the time, because that would be bad. Although, on the other hand, as of today, our visitor and tourism economy has essentially snapped back and is doing quite well, even though it's difficult to hire people. Why? Because people were priced out and left. So if you gentrify a region and the employees that are empowering the current economy are priced out and need to leave to find affordable places to live and work, you may cannibalize, is the word, your current successful economy. I think I saw that $15 billion will be brought in thanks to events between now, today is Friday, October 13th, 2023. And between now and CES on January 9th, I think it is, 2024, there are something like a dozen events that all told will allegedly, projections, will bring in some $15 billion. So we're not doing too bad. It'd be nice if some of that money would go for education. Despite the recent banner posted on Mobile World Congress, which I should have pulled this up. It's somewhere. Let me see if I can find it real quick. That Las Vegas rivals San Francisco when it comes to innovation. Let me see if I can find this. Yes, here it is. So on the Mobile World Congress website for Las Vegas, an enterprise city, as well as being a tech startup hub to rival San Francisco. Maybe San Francisco today, but even then, no. Las Vegas offers a truly holistic event experience with high-tech entertainment. True. In fact, the terrace party on the first day of Mobile World Congress was overlooking the Sphere. So you could see our high-tech entertainment. Nature activities, this is true. A lot of hiking, Springs Preserve. There's actually quite a bit of nature that is not often accounted for when people visit the Strip. They believe that is Las Vegas. Technically not. And Michelin-starred restaurants, which, again, innovation with food. There's no shortage of good and interesting victuals here. So that's cool. But as an enterprise city rivaling San Francisco when in the tech startup arena, no. Let's just keep it simple. No. Not yet. Maybe not ever. We'll see. So, but I've touched on this several times. The future Silicon Valley is probably Phoenix or Tempe, Chandler, Central Arizona area. They actually have silicon fabs and so on. So Utah as well, Salt Lake, their Silicon Slopes is actually, even though I commented at one point that you should have a chip fab and do something with chips to be a silicon anything, I later had to correct myself because they do have a Texas Instruments fab in Lehi, which is a a little bit south of Salt Lake. So yeah, we don't have those things. So we'll have to see what happens. So the problem I have, though, as we now get into the real meat of this, with AB 77, let me back up slightly. When I moved here 10 years ago, almost exactly, it was technically August 1st. No, really? August 1st? It was technically mid-July. I think it was July 12, 15, 17, somewhere in there. August 1st, 2013, moved to Vegas from the real Silicon Valley. I discovered the Downtown Project, which I had barely read about in the news prior to moving here. I moved after a house fire, so I wasn't necessarily researching things like that. I was more interested in let's try something new. I have less stuff to move, so why not? So when I moved to Las Vegas 10 years ago, 10 years and 2 months ago now, there was sort of the beginnings in the Downtown Project of some sort of a, not necessarily all tech, but certainly a little bit of tech going on, a little bit of app development. There were also, as you may recall, there was a focus on retail, the creation or opening or support of Fremont Street and near Stewart to Ogden, maybe a little bit further, all the way down to like 10th. So Fremont East, several fine establishments, retail, bar, restaurant opened. So not everything was tech, which is good. So supporting entrepreneurialism on a more level playing field, good things. AB 77 has been crafted, I would say, with some support for existing gateways, which also started about 10 years ago in the Reno area. I think it's interesting that the big thing with access to funding is more is better, right? So 10 years ago when I first moved here, there was some access to funding, Vegas Tech Fund, that brought in some other interest. There were a few things that were interesting, though, about moving a startup to downtown Las Vegas because there was no infrastructure and culture in place. There was no ecosystem existing to support this sort of diversity of entrepreneurial focus. So that tended to bring the community together in the Downtown Project, I think, and that's something we should explore more in a retrospective project, perhaps. But I think it ended up isolating the Downtown Project from other places. And as we talked about with Dylan Bathurst a while back, sometimes when you were successful as a startup in the Downtown Project, you ended up, as I so often say, when you get funding externally, one of the strings attached can be tugged on to bring you from where you are to where they are. So if you get funding or acquired by a company in the Bay Area, then you may or may not be staying in Las Vegas or wherever your startup is. You might be moving to the Bay Area. So 10 years ago, I noticed that some of the startups that moved here were not completely prepared and that there wasn't really, I call it the last mile, right? The last mile was not really accounted for. So you kind of arrived at like, okay, good luck. And I've talked at length about this and probably will again. So fast forward to, March, I think it was, March 2023. Speaking to some colleagues here, and we all kind of were on the same page as far as the need for a starting point when people get here. Fun fact, I started calling the last mile the first mile. And so we started looking at what is available for startups here. And one of the things we looked at was how AB 77, before it was passed, this was several months ago, how AB 77 was propping up, if you will, the existing players as though they were sufficient. Necessary, yes. Sufficient, I would argue, no. And so when you have government legislation backing a particular interest, and this has always been true with food trucks, for example, which I talked about in a previous episode, but you are picking winners sometimes if the legislation is crafted by or for particular interests, then it will tend to favor those particular interests. So that's been a concern. So while we were creating this thing, which we called the Startup Resource Center, our goal was to create a sort of an entryway or gateway into, not protecting so much, a gateway into the startup infrastructure, the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem of Southern Nevada. So we did a lot of reading and looking around, and I actually reached out to SBDC. I reached out to SCORE. These are the two main resources that are lauded. They're pointed to as, well, you must call them. If you are a entrepreneur in Vegas or coming to Vegas, you must reach out to SBDC. It's backed by the SBA, Small Business Association. In the Southern Nevada implementation, it appears that a lot of work is done by student interns. And if we contacted them over the summer, by the time we got to this, it was June. So there was no one to deliver on any of the things that they said they could do. So that was a disappointment, but it had us concerned because they also didn't actually respond to we requested like a logo, maybe some website effort. And rather than saying we don't have anybody available because it's the summer, they simply ignored our requests. And these were submitted through their request channels, right? It wasn't like we picked up the phone and left a voicemail. So SBDC is a weak link. SCORE also lauded as a fine resource for entrepreneurialism. I have worked with SCORE twice in my time here in Southern Nevada. The first time it was actually, I spoke with SCORE about our owners association that we were forming for mobile vendors. And the person I happened to speak with had decades of experience in the restaurant industry. Now, this may be news, but the restaurant industry and brick and mortar, they feel that mobile vendors are unfair adversarial competition. Yes, adversarial competition, that's a normal thing, but unfairly perhaps adversarial. Often there's a belief that food trucks get unfair access to customers without paying rent or, well, as I like to say, or having a roof over their business when it's raining, or having plates and silver, flatware and silverware that isn't disposable, and a large pantry to store. So there are pluses and minuses to both. So if the owners of a restaurant are already anti mobile vendor, food truck, then speaking to a food truck about a food truck owners association with an adversarial restaurant owner, historically or otherwise, will skew the results of the discussion, which it did. The same is true of the more recent outreach. We contacted SCORE relating to the Startup Resource Center. I would determine later that the person I spoke to had an undisclosed potential conflict of interest, so he decided to just not tell me. I found out later that there would have been cause for him to disclose what he was involved with directly, not advising another client. That would be different. He was listed in the governance of I'm not going to say a competitor, but certainly another entity that was possibly doing something related. It would have been nice if the person had disclosed this involvement, right? Again, not a client contacting SCORE as we were, but that he is sort of like the restaurant person advising me. Now, he disclosed that in the case of the restaurant person. I think he was a restaurant owner. But yeah, I wish the SCORE, and then the SCORE person disappeared after that. So both of my interactions with SCORE have also been somewhat disappointing, maybe slightly troubling. And these are the two hooks on which we hang our hats for the entrepreneur visiting Vegas, in addition to Startup NV, of course, which has its hands in everything. Startup NV, Incubate NV, Accelerate NV, Hello NV, Goodbye NV, Exit NV. So now that's not to say that they're the only ones. We have Generator, which was celebrated substantially later in 2022. I think it was August-ish. And then July. And then they had their first cohort shortly after. I was in the mentor swarm, so I got to meet all of the members of the cohort, all the startups that were participating in the Generator 12-week, I think it was 12-week program. That was interesting. Generator had only one cohort so far. They may have another one. I guess, in December, perhaps, and we'll see how that goes. I will say that at least half of the members of the cohort were companies from outside of Nevada, which is fine, but it is important to realize that the Generator goals are not to prop up entrepreneurs in Nevada. It's to prop up the ecosystem in Nevada, and they're part of it, which may mean bringing in entrepreneurs from other places. And to my knowledge, none or most of the companies that were in the cohort were intending to be located in Nevada. Take that for what it's worth. And then Startup.Vegas, which was initially when I first started participating in their events, was about building community and establishing connections between funding sources and startups and so on. But it's technically connecting local investment in the Southern Nevada or Nevada area with any startup. And so as soon as we started noticing that more and more presentations and discussion were around non-Las Vegas or non-Nevada startups, it became clear once again that this is about, in their case, about servicing their investment pool or investors or a certain subset of the ecosystem, which is fine, but it seemed slightly disingenuous to me the way their participation was presented initially. And so I've sort of divorced myself of Startup.Vegas interactions. But in the interim, I don't know if it's been officially announced, like signed on the dotted line, so to speak, but it is generally well known and softly announced that Startup NV and Startup.Vegas are merging. And so we have fewer options. We have Generator, which received an endorsement from the governor at the time, Governor Sisolak, that Generator is a national entity. So they focus in different markets. So they came to Southern Nevada. I think they're also in Reno. So making Nevada entrepreneurial again. And if they are not having another they should have had another cohort after the first one. So it's coming up on I think it's 9 months since the last cohort. If it either ended in December or January. I don't recall. So it's coming up on a year. I believe they did do an event at CES. So it must have ended around CES 2023. Don't quote me on that. But either way, there should have been at least one more cohort in there. They've been profoundly silent. And then we have Startup NV and Startup.Vegas merging. And so we have, and there are other possibilities, opportunities to participate in similar programs. You could leave the area and participate in Techstars or Y Combinator perhaps, maybe. But as far as local enabling entities, the entrepreneurial support organizations, as they say, are we adding or subtracting? So if we consolidate Startup NV and Startup.Vegas, we have fewer options. Startup NV has already received favorable legislation in the form of AB 77. Startup NV also has intimate oversight or interaction or at least involvement with not only their own programs. Angel NV is sort of like what it sounds, connecting angel funding, angels to funds, I suppose. Before AB 75, I was not an accredited investor. Now maybe I'll look into that with the reduced requirements. But either way, Startup NV has been sort of the go-to central planning entity for certainly access to capital, some forms of training, and so on. So with the merger, Startup.Vegas sort of has now access to that connectedness, and Generator doesn't appear to be a substantial player. So we have Startup NV.Vegas, one to rule them. And interesting things there, considering who was a co-founder of Startup.Vegas and the founders of Startup NV announcing their retirement in the next 18 months or so. So who's the heir apparent to this substantial control over the entrepreneurial funding marketplace or environment? Now it's interesting to note Startup NV focuses very specifically on software startups or technology startups, to be sure. Sometimes hardware or bio, but and their website lists some of the specifics. And since that's subject to change, I will simply say that they're not necessarily interested in any entrepreneur. They're certainly not interested if you're starting a restaurant or a bar or a coffee shop or a bookstore. They're interested if you're starting a software company to service those clients or vertical businesses, not necessarily any entrepreneur. So I think it's interesting or essential even to be aware that when we talk about our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem in Nevada, certainly Southern Nevada, we are not talking about any entrepreneur. We're not talking about any innovation. Even though there's an Office of Innovation or Office of Entrepreneurialism, are they going to be able to help with any entrepreneur challenges, access to resources? Or are they focusing more, speaking more in Southern Nevada here, are they focusing more on tech startups, on being the next Silicon Valley? So certain entrepreneurs are enabled or encouraged, not necessarily all. So the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance, LVGEA, recently hired someone to shepherd our entrepreneurial ecosystem into the future, perhaps. We'll see. It's interesting to note that that person that was hired was also one of the co-founders of Startup.Vegas. So consolidation of individual oversight is taking place. Interesting to note. That person must be an amazing entrepreneur or an amazing politician with no specific entrepreneurial background. One of those. So the job role before this person was hired, the job requirements, the desire to hire this person, place in writing, was circulated by people who were concerned that this person would get the job. So prior to the person getting the job that they were apparently meant to have, job rec went out, and so I have it in the form it was in. I understood it was pulled in to be rejiggered or somewhat, but end of the day, there was a foregone conclusion. The individual that received the job. So the metrics that were part of the job rec, the desire to grow and develop our entrepreneurial ecosystem with the following performance metrics. And I'm going to read them, copy and pasted from the job rec. Here we go. Early stage funding compared with national and global averages. So that's access to capital for startups. We want more. Okay, sure. Median seed round. That means a startup that gets a seed round. What's the median value? Not the average. Sorry, not the average. It's the middle value. So if you're familiar with the average, that's you add all the dollar amounts and you divide by the number of dollar amounts. The median is the middle value. So based on the population distribution. So no, it's not. It's just the middle value. Sorry. Median series A round, same thing. So seed versus A round, these have sort of ranges of dollar values if you're not in the investment game. So seed is usually enough to get up and running, to present to more people, to get A round, and so on. Number of software developers, engineers in Las Vegas. So that means that they are more interested in software and engineering, and so am I. So, that's all well and good. But if you are going to pretend to want to create an entrepreneurial ecosystem, should you just call it, we want to create an engineering ecosystem or a software unicorn ecosystem. So it's, I think, in my opinion, slightly disingenuous otherwise. Software engineer salary. Okay, well, I can get behind that. But here again, we're focused on software. We're not even focused on mechanical materials. We're not even though they say engineers in Las Vegas, they're talking about softwares with their laptops, sitting in coffee shops, writing the next unicorns. That's what they envision. And maybe they'll move into a co-work space, and then maybe they'll rent an office space, and they'll become, legitimate members of our society until they get pulled with one of those strings to an outside funding venture capitalist locality. And that could be anywhere. It could be Utah, it could be Denver, it could be Austin, it could be, it could be Salt Lake or Provo or any number of cities in Park City in Utah. So So yes, I mentioned a state and a city and a city. Somewhere in Colorado, somewhere in Texas. Number of software engineering salary, yes. Number of exits annually. So an exit is when a company gets bought, essentially. So they are able to pay their venture capitalist investors with a return on their investment. And that is ultimately the goal of Startup NV, right? That's they work for their investors. It's nice when a startup succeeds, but it's only interesting if the money that went in comes back out with profit margin, with return on the investment. So exits are important, and exits typically take 5 to 7 years, give or take. I mean, that's very rough. But yeah, you figure 5 to 7 years, you want to make a solid return. If you put early A round money in, you put 100 grand, you put 300, you put $1 million, you want to get 10 million out. You want to get a nice return on that 5 to 7 year investment. And so they favor the ones that will probably do that. And so a coffee shop, not going to do that, for example. Time to exit in years. So here again, they want the number of exits. They'd like it to be short, of course. You want your money back as soon as possible. But yeah, I think 5 to 7 years is pretty typical up until recently. Now that there is as we're talking about this now in October 2023, there is a tighter access to money. There's some interesting times just in general with inflation and economic confidence. Confidence in the economy, I should say. And access to capital for startups. The AI revolution has left things a little weird, I think. What comes next? Who's going to have jobs? Which jobs will be taken? Will AI be a false starter? Kind of like Web3 and the blockchain, crypto, NFT stuff. Is it overly hyped, et cetera, et cetera? So yeah, it'll be interesting. Those are all my opinions. We'll see what happens. And something I'm concerned about is, yes, I've said already, the notion of it, and you can speak to the people at Startup NV and they'll tell you exactly the same thing. The definition of a Nevada startup has been rather fluid over the years. So not necessarily based in Nevada. Maybe you have one person. Maybe you're a foreign corporation registered with the Secretary of State. So you're a legal entity doing business in Nevada as a foreign corporation. Maybe you have nobody here. You have your registered agent and nobody else. Maybe you participate in a cohort for generator, or what are the other few? Oh yeah, that's right. We already talked about all of them. Got those out of the way very quickly. So you perhaps are here. Perhaps you are not. Perhaps you will find success here. Perhaps you will never set foot in Nevada. So Nevada startups, interesting. So do those help the economy? They do. In a word, the reason that small business is such a critical component of any economy, which is absolutely true across the entire United States, is that small business employs people. It enables people to create their own business, right? You may work for a small company and then decide you want to start your own small company. So it kind of feeds back on itself. So more jobs with less capital investment. You don't have to build an office building to house or to facilitate, I guess, 100, 1,000. You need a coffee shop or retail location, or you may need a co-work space, or maybe you're completely virtual. So small businesses can scale quickly as far as workforce. They tend to be able to. They can do different things. They can move more quickly. They don't have access to capital. That's one of the downsides. But you're supposed to be contributing to the economy if you call yourself a startup in a particular locality. This is why you form a foreign corporation, for example. But because Nevada doesn't have taxes, certainly not like, 45 of the other states in the country. And I'm not complaining. I love it when tourists and people gambling pay my taxes for me. But it's important to realize that contributing to the economy here cannot really take place so easily if you're not actually here. When you have your startup or small business in another place, you aren't probably not employing people in the Nevada economy. So something to think about. So Nevada, wanting to be an innovation hub, we want to be entrepreneurial, and innovation goes nicely with that. Clark County wants to, that's Southern California, Southern Nevada, would like to be an innovation hub itself. because the city of Las Vegas already is. It is the next Silicon Valley, as we know. Rivals tech hubs like San Francisco. And we are learning recently that the Clark County Commission has approved a plan. I think they want some more detail on staffing and probably some more impact, economic and environmental impact, probably, but who can say? They're constructing. They want to look at the construction, if I can speak, of new facilities that will form an innovation district, and it will be somewhere between, possibly stretching between the Harry Reid Tech Park. I think I mentioned this earlier at the top of the show, and the Innovation Center along the 215. It will probably. It seems reasonable to assume that it will come close to UNLV somewhere, the campus proper, and certainly the tech park. So an innovation district. If you read, so I linked to an article from KTNB, yes. Clark County Commissioners accept plans of proposed innovation district. So if you flip through there is a link to a presentation, I think it's 35 slides or so, about the innovation district that they're proposing. Excuse me. And so you can read that. You can find this online very easily. So you don't have to, I'm not hand waving here. I've extracted a quote from the article, and you'd have to look in the slide deck. So I just took the quote from the article. The innovation district will be buildings with small spaces for startup companies. I'm quoting here, excerpt. Startup companies, so essentially co-work space or into desk, as well as larger spaces for more established corporations. So they want to build WeWork, which has done great. Commercial real estate is the next big thing. And they want to have more space for established corporations. Those are moving into Henderson and North Las Vegas. So why not move into Clark County? The proposed innovation district would also be the site of housing for graduate and research students. Housing. Two housing. Two's better than one. So housing, which is something of a challenge here, although even though there's a shortage of apartment inventory, that is being rectified. So low-income housing, shortage of that also. So if they're going to tackle that, that's not horrible. Restaurants, hey, that'll be interesting. Finally, some restaurants around here. Coffee houses, that is what we need. And bars. At long last. Bars in Clark County. For entrepreneurs to meet. Where would they meet otherwise? Developers would implement a transportation system utilizing shuttle buses, like the Loop, maybe, or maybe something underground, something idiotic like the Boring Tunnel, or rental city bikes. I don't want to repeat all this, so you can rewind if you need to go through that list again, but I will simply say we have those. We have all of those. The housing, you could argue we could use more of, but that's under construction today all over Las Vegas. So I myself am based in the city of Las Vegas proper, so I will tell you there are multiple construction projects I can see from where I am right now. So housing is in progress. Will it be solved? Probably not. But there is an effort being made today for more housing. So if they have more for students and research fellows and so on, that'd be fine. But yeah, restaurants, coffee houses, bars, we got those. We got those, in fact, in our current innovation district in the city of Las Vegas. If you read the article, you'll see at the end that they would like to examine other localities to see how their innovation districts have worked. And much like the entrepreneurial ecosystem report that Mo Collins did, they want to look at other places without focusing intently on here. So in that report, there was a cursory examination from some anecdotes of people that were involved in the downtown project. There was not a sufficiently deep dive into the impact of the downtown project's efforts, what worked and what did not, on the entrepreneurial ecosystem of the time and how those have lingered to today. They have. Spoiler alert. I don't want to spoil the future for you, but I may have. So similarly, we have the Innovation District, which was established in Las Vegas in 2019. People like Don Jacobson make that go. The Innovation Center, the International Innovation Center, in fact, there are two of them. One of them is much more of a co-work slash event space that we have been able to use for my other day job that I don't get paid for. Innovate for Vegas Foundation. We used to have a monthly hackathon meetup there. For Cafe Genius, we've had pitch workout rooms there for free. So the city has been supportive in that regard. And mostly that comes down to Don Jacobson. So it's not really the city understanding these needs, but individuals like Don. What we have found when we were building the notion of the Startup Resource Center was that the people with city and county job titles in their business development and economic development and so on, they are not entrepreneurs. They work for government. They have an employer. So they're not entrepreneurial. So we were finding that people don't necessarily understand the needs of entrepreneurs. And so you get that last mile problem I described earlier. And we were going to turn that into the first mile. But part of what we were going to try to accomplish was connecting these various disparate resources. Some are available now. Some are not in a form that I would say is available. Try to consolidate those into something that would be easily accessible and consumable by a person considering an entrepreneurial adventure in the greater Vegas area, so Southern Nevada, somewhere. It's a substantial undertaking because most of the people we encountered did not quite understand what those needs could be, nor even what we have today. Case in point, I reached out to City of Las Vegas, their Economic Development Office, and I asked, is there a list? Now remember, we're going to be the next Silicon Valley someday. Is there a list of current active accelerator programs, maybe incubator if you like, working and servicing the greater Vegas area? We're going to be the next Silicon Valley. That should be on a Post-it note, should be memorized. The response was, I guess we could check the licensing office and see. Wait a minute. Whoa. You should know this. The example I give, glib though it may be, it's like calling the fire department, asking if they know where the fire hydrants are. And they're like, well, we'll have to get back to you. No, of course you know that. That's what your business is. Your whole job is about that. Economic development. You should know. And because we don't have like 24, we have 2, maybe. There used to be some other entities. I mean, if you look at Deal Room, which is an online resource that is maintained on a subscription basis, I think. So Startup NV is sort of the ombudsman. They have oversight, I think, or they manage or maintain, or however you want to look at it. The Vegas subscription, I guess. Whatever that is. Who knows? So I visited there first before contacting the city, and there were only several listed, not 2 pages, but like a dozen. And some of them were places like the Mill, which has long been not really operational. That was a cool idea. It was just, I don't think it's around anymore. Vegas Tech Fund, which may or may not be still operating, but I don't know if you can go pitch them today. So yeah, the dozen that were listed there, I think maybe, I don't know if Generator was on there, certainly Startup NV, but if you were to actually check, you would be disappointed. LVGEA has an entrepreneur resources section of their website. Same thing, a lot of stale information, not really completely useful. It's there, I guess. That's something. So we were looking at how can we make, if you can imagine an API for a city. APIs are popular, right? I want this piece of information rather than calling around and getting, you should talk to this person. You should talk to that person. You should go to SCORE. SBDC, that's where you should go. That's your number one. It's summer. Don't go there. So rather than sending people on their way, start with online resources. We have the internet is catching on now. Finally, we can take advantage of the internet, take advantage of the various disparate resources, consolidate them into an entry point. Why not? Enable people looking for information to find it. Do I eventually need to go to SCORE or SBDC? Well, let's hope not, but maybe. Should those be the first places you go? No. Oftentimes in the greater Vegas area, you will hear very familiar references to individuals by name or two locations. One common one is, go to Blackfire. And I've heard this from people who have lived here for months, not 6 months, but 2 months. They're interested in entrepreneurial endeavors for themselves or in general. And they say, I don't even know what Blackfire, somebody said to go to Blackfire. What is that? Now, yes, you can go to Blackfire something, I think it's Blackfire Tech, no, what is it? I can't remember what it's called, but that website is not even there anymore. So you can't go to the Blackfire website. You have to go to a UNLV section of, the section of the UNLV website is focused on the tech park, and you can see Blackfire. Blackfire, this is a branding snafu in my opinion. Blackfire is one floor so far of the tech park, which has one main building so far. I'm probably completely mischaracterizing the overall, but when you go to Blackfire, you are looking for the tech park near IKEA, which is a better landmark. You will go into the tech park and you will go upstairs to Blackfire. Right? You might also go to the floor beneath to, I think it's called Cooperate, which is a co-work space. Hey, we're going to build another one because we don't have one. If you go to the Cooperate co-work space, you will find a very, very library-like quiet place to do things because nobody's there. Not to say they don't have people leasing space. I went there one time and was told, oh, yes, welcome to Cooperate. We have a lot of big companies like Microsoft and Google. And I said, what about local companies like startups and such? Seems like you should emphasize those, but no. So I could go on, but I will not. We're coming up on an hour. I'm going to filter out the silence sections because I've taken some long pauses. I don't know if you can tell my voice is enjoying our weather change. I am not complaining about the cooler weather. I am complaining about whatever's floating around the air. You can hear it in my voice. So I'm going to come in for a landing. The gaps, minding the gaps. We're finally there. So the last mile, I've talked about it several times. When you get to Las Vegas or when you're considering moving to Las Vegas, if you are told, oh, call these 3 people or go to a meetup or, good luck. Well, do you have any accelerators? We're not sure. Give us a minute. I got to get this list of 2 companies on a Post-it note and stick it on my forehead. So the last mile continues to be a problem. The Startup Resource Center would have been a cool idea, except we realized that there's so much dysfunction here that we didn't want to deal with it. Better things to do. Someone should do that, though. Should the government do that? Absolutely not. The government should support it, enable it, facilitate it. But some entity built by and for entrepreneurs. And by the way, not everything is an app. The Startup Resource Center should be able to help people starting startups. And a corollary, should be able to help people trying to innovate. So a collection of resources, an asset map, if you will, to help people find innovation resources as well as entrepreneurial, right? Access to capital is fine. Do you have a place I can prototype things? Do you have a place I can go and demonstrate my innovative project? We will often hear about Halo on, what is it? UAVs? Autonomous vehicles? Is the U still in there? I don't even know. Autonomous vehicles wandering around the streets of Nevada because of the drone programs and the Nevada test site for drones, not the other one. Nevada was one of 6 locations approved by the FAA for drone testing nearly 10 years ago is when I got here. So we already were set up for autonomous vehicles by all the usual travel media, air, land, sea, all that. So we already have the ability to have, within whatever requirements, to have these vehicles driving on the streets. That doesn't necessarily mean that innovation is taking place here, although I believe Halo does do development here. Maybe not. I could be wrong. Some development. But certainly, if you're here and you're looking for, I would have to say, like, for physical items, if you're building some hardware thing, or if you are, perhaps you are creating a restaurant, we have the big culinary union. You can probably run into a lot of them on the strip for a while, carrying signs. So we have resources spread around to enable innovation and entrepreneurialism. Finding them, connecting with them, and knowing which ones are good. It's a challenge. We don't have an innovation culture. That's going to take another 10 years. We're 10 years in from when the downtown projects planted some seeds. Sadly, a lot of not all, but a lot of those seeds have blown away. They didn't take root here. Some did. Innovation culture, it's critical to have a culture of creativity that is not only present, but enabled and encouraged. You need to have a population that thinks doing creative things is what you should do, not what somebody else should do. We focus on tech entrepreneurialism. That seems like a problem. Software tech is a component. Certainly anyone is welcome to start a business or a company or a project around software. So I'm a software architect myself. More of a general engineer, but certainly I wouldn't design a bridge, but I would know who to talk to or where to look. But I'm more software, some hardware, in that order. But I'm fond of entrepreneurialism regardless. And I think we should be careful about how we support entrepreneurialism if we are really only supporting the laptop gang, right? I don't want to say bro coders, so I won't. But if we're just going to pull in software developers and treat that as our new ecosystem, we are not going to get very far. We have the limited resources I mentioned. So SBDC, disappointing. SCORE, disappointing. I'm not saying individuals at each of those organizations are not disappointing, but I am saying that from the outside, my interactions with both of those were sad. Essentially, we stopped our project because of things like this. So Startup Resource Center was put on the back burner indefinitely because it's just too much of a pain to get going here. I've spoken to people who don't even bother. Because a true entrepreneur, you try to solve problems first. You don't wander around with your handouts asking for help. You're not, somebody else shouldn't solve your problem. You're in the business of solving a problem, right? So you should have the wherewithal or the motivation, I suppose, or the notion that, hey, I should try to find answers to these things at work. And I can certainly talk to peer groups, or I can talk to people in other places. I can talk to people here. I can go to the odd meetup, although you will often need to begin a journey there rather than end it. But you will be pointed in many directions by various people. And because there is no, we can call it a one-stop. And if you look online, you will see different cities, different ecosystems have something like a one-stop shop, right? So you can go find out, I need information about licensing or access to capital or accelerators here. And they're not going to turn around and go, I don't know. Let me try to find that for you. They're going to have that. That's what they do. Enable entrepreneurs. And again, I think it's a mistake to overemphasize enabling startups that are software. Software is not everything. People think it's in everything, and they're not far off. But if you make software everything, you forget about all the skills and abilities and interests and capabilities that go with that or that benefit from that. So I always prefer to emphasize the fact that software is a part of a larger picture. I don't know if you heard that car go by, sorry. Software is a part of a larger picture. So finally, our education infrastructure is barely, this is after 10 years, barely connected to entrepreneurialism. Not to say that it is not. When I moved here 10 years ago, I did try to institute a clinic program between UNLV, focused on engineering at first, but, because everything's software, right? But we started with engineering because where I went, Harvey Mudd College, we had started with an engineering clinic program. Over the years, more recently, it started in the 50s, I think. Certainly in the 21st century, they had diversified substantially so that it was cross-functional, cross-disciplinary. You could get a chemist and a physicist and an engineer. They could walk into a bar. Who knows? Who knows what's possible? But so diversifying that interface as far as capabilities has been a great thing for Harvey Mudd to take advantage of their diverse student body of very talented people. But we started with trying to roll out something similar at UNLV engineering because the downtown project completely lacked talent to execute on tech. Not completely, but there was no connection between downtown project and UNLV. That's what they told me. They said, we appear to have no communication with Downtown Project regarding getting students into the workforce there, projects and so on. So as far as like an experiment, I worked with my alma mater, Harvey Mudd College. Their business development person there helped with some guidebooks and some business plan overviews to enable a public. Harvey Mudd is a private school. Who's better than me, right? Harvey Mudd is private, so that made it a little bit easier. UNLV had to get around the Board of Regents oversight and concern about public university resources being used for private funded projects. Luckily, the very same person who co-founded Startup.Vegas and who presently works to drive the entrepreneurial ecosystem for LVGEA, who is not an entrepreneur, to be honest, let us be honest, not an entrepreneur, but a politician, also was recently elected to the Board of Regents, and that person's area of responsibility includes very specifically the tech park. So that means everything's good, right? If one person is driving everything and making all the decisions or having so heavy an amount of influence on them, what could possibly go wrong? So our education infrastructure needs to become one of entrepreneurialism and innovation, not development of employee skills. I have seen multiple presentations over the years of Southern Nevada education, which always ranks poorly, unfortunately. I don't even ask anymore because the numbers they give are bizarre. Do you know there's 50 states, right? No? Okay. So it will take time to change. In my travels, personal experience and interactions with young people since 7th grade, that's the magic time. Before 7th grade, students are learning to be sociable in their peer groups. They are talking to each other. They're learning how to take classes and do homework and take tests and all those things. By the time they're in 4th, 5th, 6th, they're socialized, you could say. They are interactive. They understand how to cooperate on projects, perhaps. They get it. They are ready to do something interesting. So in my travels, again, 7th grade is where oftentimes it's a junior high school, or even if it's in the same school, the students will often begin multiple classes, classrooms, teachers, so that they're changing classes. They're not in the same homeroom through the day, so they have different types of interactions. They have different focus areas. Oftentimes there will be an emphasis on after-school activities, more so. Not to say that there weren't before 7th grade, but this is the time when things start to become visible and available to your typical 12-year-old student in our present-day education system, public schools. And so in my travels, I think that 7th grade is the time to really, really enable any 7th grader who wants to pursue creative works and endeavors, whether it's first robotics or theater, culinary, auto shop, whatever it is. They should be shown the way that they don't necessarily need to work for someone else. This is one of the focus areas of vocational school, where they don't train their students to be employees. They can certainly give skills training that would enable entrepreneurs as well. So I spoke recently to someone who has a mobile vehicle maintenance company, mechanic, if you will. He gets substantial amounts of money for doing commercial vehicle support in the field. He has his entire business roaming around, so not quite a food truck, but mobile business. One could argue he's competing with the Jiffy Lube that he pulls up near, so who knows how that works out. But bottom line, and he said this to me, he's having difficulty finding people in the greater Vegas area who have the skills and the desire, and he's trying to pay $15 an hour over sort of market rate, I suppose. So, and this is a path to skills for someone who's interested in, vehicles, mechanical, engines, etc. A path to potential self-employment, right? Entrepreneurial pathway, an apprenticeship of sorts. Yes, I put him in touch with Northwest Academy. But the bottom line, it's difficult to find individuals in that younger age group here in the greater Vegas area who are self-driven and who want to do what they are not told to do. Well, maybe that's, let me phrase that differently. As you may know, I'm the managing director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, and all of our work is volunteer. All of our work, mine, everyone's. There's no compensation directly. There is a value for value focus down the road if we can deploy things, but everybody's time is volunteered. I'm the most frequently asked question, probably two. One, how come more of this isn't done? As in, wait, you expect me to do stuff? And the second question is always mine, like, hey, what happened to you? You disappeared. So follow through on entrepreneurial endeavors. Entrepreneurial innovation can take the form of civic volunteerism to work on open source projects to make our communities better. Guess what? You get a ton of job skills that you can turn into real money. You can start your own companies. You might collaborate with people and start a company with them. Maybe it's software, maybe it's a coffee shop, maybe it's a food truck, maybe it's a bookstore. Who knows? The notion that we can innovate here and get out of our comfort zones, work outside, think outside the box, as the saying goes, is something we really need to cultivate here. And you do not do it with legislation at the state level, sprinkling money on top and hoping for the best. That is not how you cultivate or enable an innovation culture. It comes from bottom up. It comes from students that are interested, teachers that are willing and interested, parents, peer groups, understanding the value of being creative and putting that to use. And that's not something that will happen overnight. So yes, the news of late, especially if you go back a couple of months, we're the number one pre-IPO. If you don't look at the top other cities, we're number one of the number two. Thousands of companies are moving to the Vegas area from California over the last 10 years. There's always the very sexy headline that makes it sound like we're the next thing. But the reality is we could be a next thing, and we can do so by making a better Las Vegas, not necessarily by trying to be another city. When you see, as in the KTNV article about the Innovation District at the end there, looking at other places is interesting, but trying to be other places, not as much. And I believe that's where the largest gap is. We're not exactly sure how we're going to jump over those other gaps. And then what are we going to be when we get there? I'll leave it there for you to think about. I would love to have guests on to talk about these things. I started off having guests, but booking people on this program is tricky. A couple times people just forgot or didn't show up, or luckily it's 100% remote, so we can talk from anywhere. I have talked to people that are not located in Nevada because that's totally valid. You can be a Nevada startup anywhere you want. Similarly, you can be on the Cafe Genius Impresario's audio program from anywhere you want. You can be an entrepreneur, an innovator, or both, or neither. Please like, subscribe, share, what else? Bump, emoji, do whatever. I do appreciate you listening. Again, if you want to be a guest, let me know. You probably have seen me around. You've probably seen me at the Desert Winds Coffee Roasters. Not a sponsor, but it is a cool innovation and ideation marker to put on the map. If we had an asset map, and we will, if we had an asset map, certainly Desert Wind would be a place where people go to talk about their ideas. If you want to hear more about that, you can listen to last week's episode with Oliver, Martin, and Sean, where we talk about just that. And you can hear future episodes as well. What are they about? We'll find out. Thanks for listening.